Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Angel by Your Side, and I'm sipping on some raspberry tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you could certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are cobalt blue, titanium white, fire red, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, green oxide, deep yellow, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like to, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil that I'll be using for some drawing, and then I have 3 brushes from my personal brush line, which is Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 8 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 2 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a few additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of the canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you could download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our landscape. I'm going to use my pencil. You could certainly use any drawing utensil that you'd like. You could even use paint to draw a nice simple outline here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to guide you through a series of markers. We're going to connect those markers, and then we'll have a nice basic landscape that we can work on. We're going to be separating the sky from the distant land, from the water, from the foreground. So we're going to have 4 different sections here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find myself about halfway up or down the left-hand side, which takes me to about here. And then I'm going to go up from that about an inch, inch and a half, make myself a marker. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So about halfway and then come up just about an inch, inch and a half. I'm going to connect these 2 markers with just a long continual line. This does not have to be a straight line. This is just something that's going to give us a nice barrier for these different sections. Then I'm going to come on the left hand side. I'm going to go about an inch above this line, make myself another marker. And then on the right hand side, I'm going to go up. If this is about halfway between here and here, I'm going to be just a little bit below that, or maybe about 2.5 inches above this line. I'm going to connect this marker to this marker with a long kind of rolling hill. I'm going to just start over here. I'm just going to have it kind of on the level or kind of lower side in through here. And then as I kind of go up in through here, I'm just making a couple little bumps. I've got this a little bit higher than my end point in through here. Most of this stuff on the right hand side is going to be covered by some foreground trees that we're going to be doing, so you don't have to worry about yours being as lumpy and bumpy as mine. Just something to separate the sky from that is good enough. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come on this left hand side, I'm going to come down to the bottom of my canvas, and then I'm going to come up about 3.5 inches, make myself a little bit of a marker, and then on the right hand side I'm going to come up maybe about 4 inches somewhere in through there. So just a little bit higher on the right side than on the left side. And then I'm going to connect these the same way, but I'm going to bring them both down a little bit so those middle areas a little bit lower than these end areas. So I'm just going to take this like this, bring it down a little bit. And again, doesn't have to be a perfectly straight line. It's going to look more natural if you have it a little bumpy like that. And that's all I'm going to do for this first step. I'm going to be using my large brush for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting our sky and our water, and we're going to put the base coat on our both pieces of land, the background trees and the ground. I'm going to be using my large brush to paint, but I'm going to use my medium brush to mix a couple of custom colors. So I'm going to have my ground, my base coat for my snow, I'm going to do a gray color. So I'm going to premix a custom gray color, which we'll be utilizing in the distant land as well. And then I'm going to make a different shade of blue for my sky, which we'll be using in our water as well. So I have premixed my colors so you can see where I'm going. This is my gray color that I'm going for. How I got to that was about equal parts of black and brown and a little bit of white paint. And I'm going for just a medium warm type of a gray color. You could certainly make yours lighter or darker, whatever. I think actually I want it a little bit lighter than that. You could go for something that's even on the cooler side with a little bit of blue in it if you wanted to, but I kind of wanted my snow on the foreground land to look a little bit closer to us, so I'm making this a little on the warmer side to bring it closer to the viewer. And then this color right in through here, I'm going to wash and dry my medium brush so I can mix another color here. This color right here is just cobalt blue with a tiny touch of black in it. You don't need a lot of black. This is just to give it a little bit deeper, darker of a tone, so it is has a little bit higher of a contrast on my canvas for going from the dark to the light. And those are the two colors that I'm going for. So once you've got your two colors, I'm going to start with my base coat, or with my water and my land first, or my, excuse me, my sky and my water first. I'm going to pick up my custom blue color. I'm going to start at the top of my sky using a left to right, I got a little thing in here, using a left to right type of a brush stroke. You could, if you wanted to, have it look like there's clouds going by. You could certainly use a circular type of a brush stroke, but I'm going to just use a nice smooth left to right brush stroke so I can have just a nice bright sky with not a lot of activity, because I want my focal point to be elsewhere in the painting. After I did that top area, that's about an inch, inch and a half, I picked up white paint on my dirty brush. So what this is going to do, it's going to allow me to create what's called a gradient as I go down this sky. So it'll get lighter and lighter as it comes down towards the horizon. I just keep picking up white paint as I'm coming down my sky towards that horizon line. And I'm bumping into my pencil as I get down towards that horizon line. So this is going to allow me to have nice full coverage. It's going to allow me to look like the sky is sitting behind that landscape instead of me painting the landscape around, or, you know, it not having that nice connection where the sky goes behind it. And then I just kind of lightly go back and forth to make sure that I've got it all nice and colored in, and you can just kind of keep rubbing it back and forth with a light touch. That's going to give you a nice even gradient. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a similar process to the water, only I'm going to have the water lighter at the top and darker at the bottom. So you're in essence kind of reversing that gradient. But I think I want a little bit more white right here. I just picked up a little bit more white so I can get this just a little bit lighter as it's hitting that horizon in through here. And if it dries too dark, you can always add a little bit of lightness after it dries as well. So I'm going to start on my water with my dirty brush. I'm just going to pick up white paint. So I've got my dirty brush. I'm just picking up white paint at the top of my water section. So of course it's going to end up light blue because I still have some of that light or some of that blue on my brush. but I want it nice and light up at the top. And then I know I have a lot of blue in my bristles, so as I'm coming down this water, I can almost just push my brush a little bit harder, which releases the blue that was within my bristles. You might not even have more paint like I do in there, but if you do, you can just kind of push your brush and it tends to release those colors right on the canvas. And as I'm coming down, now I'm going to pick up that custom blue plus white paint. So I have about equal parts of the custom blue plus white. So this is going to get darker and darker as it goes down towards the bottom of the water. And when I get down at the bottom, I'm just going to pick up the dark blue, the custom dark blue. And I want my water to look kind of placid or still, so I'm just going to kind of move this back and forth, a nice soft gentle water. I just picked up my custom blue, so this bottom part is going to be the darkest, and I'm just getting this all along my pencil, and again bumping into my pencil so I don't have any unpainted areas. And then I'm just going to go left and right to get this to blend in. And again, this is not, the water and the sky are not our focal points. They're just kind of background noise behind the rest of the painting. So now that I've got that done, I'm not going to wash my brush, and I'm going to pick up gray, and I'm going to paint my base coat to my background, or to my back land. So I've got the combination of blues on there. Now I'm picking up a little bit of gray, and I'm going to, you can do this either in a kind of a circular type of brushstroke, or you could dot it. At this juncture, either way is going to work for you because this is just the base coat. I'm using the gray and the blue in order to get a distant type of color, a distant cool type of color on the on this landscape. I know I'm going to be having all kinds of trees, and I'm going to put some areas with snow in there, so I don't need this to have any detail right now. I'm really just looking to have almost a combination of the gray and the blue in a soft type of a way. I'm lightly getting the top to have a soft edge as it's meeting that sky, but nothing really terribly important needs to be done at this point, just getting the layer on here. I'm even just going to kind of rub my brush back and forth where it meets the water, and if I bump into my water a little bit, like I inevitably am going to, that's okay, because we're going to be doing a land line, and we're going to have things hiding all of that edge work anyways, so we can just kind of get this layer of paint on. So now that I've got that on there, I'm going to do the same thing down at the bottom, only this time I'm not going to pick up any more blue. I'm just going to be picking up my gray, and I'm going to get this entire area down at the bottom painted with gray. Again, no need to do any fancy brushstroke, and because I'm just using gray at this point, I can really just kind of go across in a solid way. When I get up to where it meets the water, I'm just going to make sure that I've got it touching that water, and that I don't have any unpainted areas between the water and my snow line or my land line. And if it's streaky and if it doesn't look finished at this point, it's okay, because it's not finished. And if you had blue in it, that's great. That's just going to make it look a little bit cooler, which is wonderful. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the base coat for islands. I'm going to have an island on each side of my waterway, and we're going to do the second coat on the snow on the foreground. I'm going to use my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my custom gray and white, and I do recommend before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method, or you can do as I did and just pull out a blow dryer and get it dried out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be picking up some of my custom gray on my brush, and I'm going to be creating two islands, one on the right, one on the left. When you're doing this, you're just going to want to make sure you leave enough room in the center of your canvas for your people that are going to be sitting on the bench. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over on this right hand side. I'm going to come about 1.5 inches down below this line in through here, or I'm about halfway up or down my canvas, somewhere in through here. I'm going to just use a left to right type of a brush stroke, bring this out. If this is about the center of my canvas, I'm about 2 to 3 inches to the right of that. And then I'm just coloring this in with a very loose type of brush stroke, giving myself an area where I'm going to have some trees that I'm going to put on. I'm just leaving it kind of at a little bit of a point in through there. So nothing fancy, just think of it kind of like an oblong type of a shape. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, only I'm not coming out as far as I did for that one. So I'm just going to come out to maybe about here. So maybe this is about 4 or 5 inches from the edge of my canvas. You can bring it all the way, leave yourself a little bit of a waterway behind it in case you have any area that you want to show behind your trees to really make this feel like it's a little bit of an island type of an area. And of course, making it of an organic type of a shape will make it look a little bit more natural. So now that I've done that, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just going to pick up white paint. I want the top of my snow down here to be very bright. So I have a lot of white paint on my brush right now, and I want there to appear to be some really bright snow at the edge of this piece of land. So I'm applying the paint really heavy right at the edge of that piece of land. It does not have to be perfect. I feel that just wiggling my brush a little bit from left to right is going to give me some nice texture in the snow. It's going to provide a real brightness at the edge. And then once you've kind of got that in place, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just fade it down towards the bottom of the canvas without making it all a solid color. I'm going to just let myself almost run out of paint as I'm coming down the canvas. So what that's going to do is it's going to bring that bright area towards the front, and it's going to allow for this back area to almost feel like it's closer to the viewer and that the light source is illuminating the front of that snow. And I'm just kind of, again, just letting myself run out of paint. We're going to be doing a little bit more tweaking on the snow with details of footprints and the bench and all that kinds of stuff later. So if this does not turn out as perfect as you had hoped it would at this point, just know you're going to have another opportunity to make little fiddles and adjustments on it. So once you've got this step done, we are going to be using our medium brush for the next step. And you can even have, high spots and low spots, which would mean some spots are a little bit brighter than others. That's going to make it look like you got little piles of snow here and there. So just let it happen the way that nature wants it to happen, and then you can put this large brush away. Take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our distant land. I'm using my medium brush. You could certainly use a small bristle brush or even maybe a fan brush if you want to get more creative with the texture and stuff like that. But I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors I'm going to use are white, my gray, and black. And if I need to or want to go in for any other colors, I certainly will. So what I'm looking to do is just give it kind of an impressionistic type of look where maybe we've got some areas of snow that we're seeing resting on the land, maybe at the edge of the land. Maybe there's a couple of flat spots on these hills that have accumulated some snow. Maybe there's some flat spots over here that have some snow on them. And then I'm going to give the illusion of maybe some pine trees or evergreen trees throughout here. Maybe the little texture on the edges of my hills. I'll bring up some trees in through there. I'll put a little bit of lightness up at the top of here. So I'm really just looking to give kind of an out of focus, distant hill type of appearance that has some wintry elements to it. I don't need to do much over here because I know I'm going to have tall evergreen trees coming off of this island in through here, but I do want to make sure that, you know, I've got some sort of transition if there's little peekaboo spots behind my trees that I've taken care of those. And then over on this side, I'm going to have a big tree coming off of the island in through here, so I'll want to take care of the majority of this stuff over here. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to pick up a little bit of white paint and put in my really snowy areas that I want to have. So I've got just white paint on my brush right now. I'm going to put kind of a little like a platform kind of area in through here, as if maybe there's a little hill of sorts back here that has, you know, found a way to keep some nice snow on there. You could even pick up a little bit of liquid medium or a touch of your gray. I just picked up a touch of my gray, so it didn't go too bold white on me. And then maybe I can pull some of these little, maybe the hill ends here and then kind of flattens out back in through here. I'm going to put maybe another little patch of snow in through here. So as I'm doing this, I'm just thinking, where would I want some little flat spots in this hill to be? And I'm putting white in those areas so it looks like we can kind of see through the trees and see these little maybe fields or low-lying areas within this hilly forest of sorts. So once I've got all of these lighter areas on, I just keep picking up white at this point. I picked up a little bit of gray earlier, but just picking up white right now seems to be working out. I'm also going to put a little bit of this down towards the shoreline. So I've got a little bit of white on my brush right now, just kind of going back and forth, left to right. And again, if you're feeling like it's too thick and you're just getting solid white marks, you can certainly just pick up a tiny bit of water or something to help with the fluidity. Now I'm going to pick up white plus my sky blue to get a little bit of a lighter, I need a little bit more of my blue on my brush here, a little bit lighter of an area up towards the top in through here. So this will make it look like the top of the hill maybe is got some snow on it, but it's maybe a little bit further off in the distance, so it's catching a little bit of that blue, so to speak. You don't, again, need to go as light as mine or as dark as mine. You can really just have fun with creating your own type of landscape. I'm really just providing it with some elements that will appear to be kind of wintry. I think actually on the top of this hill, I want it to look like there's a little bit of sunshine hitting it. I'm going to pick up brown and white. I didn't say I was going to use brown on this step, but I'm picking up brown and white so I can get maybe a little bit of a luminescent value over on the top of this hill, as if maybe something in the atmosphere has caught the top of it and is giving it a little bit more of a warm tone to it as opposed to a cool tone, which was what I was doing everywhere else. So that looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start intermingling maybe a little bit more of my sky blues. I just thought about putting a little bit more sky blue in through here, so I just picked a little bit more up. You can put any colors anywhere that you want. You're feeling it, just put it. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the illusion of some distant trees. So I'm picking up my custom gray and I'm changing my brush direction. So now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be kind of tapping it, which is going to give me these little points in front or intermingled with these snowy areas. So I want to give this illusion of there being some trees in there. I feel like that's a little bit too light, so I'm actually adding a tiny bit of black to my brush as well, just to give myself a little bit more contrast in this color. I don't want to do it 100%. I don't want it to be really stealing the show. I want to give the viewer the illusion that there's some pine trees back here. So I'm putting some evergreen trees. So I'm putting these vertical type of little marks in front or intermingled with these little snowy areas. That's going to provide the viewer with the information that there's trees, on one side or the other of it. So that's good. I'm just kind of tapping my brush, coming down in through here. I want to put more of these over here. So again, I'm using gray plus a little bit of my black on my brush at the same time. So that way I get a little bit more diversity in these colors so they're not just one flat color. And again, you could be using an assortment of different brushes to accomplish this. What you just want to do is allow for there to be some contrast in your colors so you can see that detail. You don't want to go through this whole process and not be able to see any of the detail that you had put in. So if I'm going through an area where there's already a lot of that background gray, and by using that same color on top of it, I'm not gonna have success seeing it. So maybe in some areas, like I just picked up some of my blue, my custom blue. So if I want, I can add, a little bit more of that custom blue tone going throughout here as well. And it doesn't always have to be those vertical marks. You can make, just little rub marks, something that's just going to give some texture to that landscape. As I'm coming towards the front of this, I do know that it's going to be a little bit more in focus. I'm still right now I just picked back up more a little bit of the black and the gray. As I'm coming towards the bottom of this landscape part, I know that I want it to be a little bit more in focus. Just picked up some of my sky blue too. So I'm going to, in this front area, I'm going to be adding some black and green to the color combination. So it brings it more in focus. When you have it distant, it's going to have lots of blues in it, but when you want it to come more forward, you can put more black and green in it, so warmer colors. So I just picked up some black and green, and I'm going to give myself, I don't want these to be too black and too in focus, because I still have more focal distance to go with my front trees. So if you need to or want to, you can put a little bit of gray on your brush as well. So black, green, and gray are going to be the colors that I'm going to utilize as I'm doing these closer pine trees or evergreen trees. And again, you could really use any color combination you want. I just want to have something that I can visibly detect has these little points at the top of it to give me the illusion of some evergreen trees. And I don't want it to be too bold or too bright. Just something that's going to allow it to look like it's in front of the ones back here, and also give me something that I can still bring even more brighter with the foreground trees, or more in focus. And then once I've got that, that's looking pretty good to me. So I'm going to, I'm washing my brush right now, and I'm going to add a little bit of gray and white on my brush so I can put a tiny bit of snow on these front trees. So this is gray and white, and I'm really just tapping in a little bit of the evidence of some snow sitting on these front trees. I don't need to do much. Again, I'm just kind of tapping in a little bit of snow that might be sitting on some of these trees. If you feel that you need to do a little bit more at the base of them, feel free to do so. And then I'm thinking that that's pretty good. I might have to or want to do a little bit more with my white right in through here, just so we can get some more pops of brightness right along that shoreline. So I got some bright white on my brush right now. And then I would let it dry and step back from it, see if there's any more fiddling that I feel could benefit or could help. Like I'm just picking up a little bit more of my sky blue right now just to break up this big gray area in through here. And then I would, we're going to use our large brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this medium brush away, take out your large brush, if you can ever stop. This is one of those steps that's really fun to just keep going. And then, put this medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the base coat for our foreground trees that are on the islands, as well as their reflections. So the base coat for the trees and their reflections. I'm going to use my large bristle brush. The colors I'm going to use are green and black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one on this side, and then I'll have maybe 5 or 6 on this side. I just want these to be very traditional evergreen trees that have some snow on them. So when I think about those type of trees, they seem to be in a triangle type of a shape. I'm going to be alternating green and black on my brush as I'm creating these trees in order to give myself some nice dimension within the branches. So I'm going to start with green and black on my brush at the same time. I'm going to do this one first. I'm just going to give myself kind of a footprint as to where I want the bottom of that tree to be. So I'm going to have it somewhere in through there, and then I want it, I would say somewhere maybe up in through here is going to be the top of it. You could certainly give yourself kind of a trunk if you wanted to, but I find sometimes when you do that, you tend to just stay to the right and the left and make yourself kind of a tree that looks something like that, which won't necessarily look very natural. So if you want to have the trunk, that's great, but when you're painting, you want to kind of, I like to tap my brush in almost like a dotting type of a technique, giving myself uneven branches, and I'm going to just alternate back and forth from green to black and making sure I hide that trunk. So that way I'm not forced to have just a left side and a right side to the tree. This will kind of force me to make sure that I have good fullness to those branches, and that, I mean, it doesn't have to be super full, but if you don't want it to just look like you have a left side and a right side, this is a great way to avoid doing that. So you can have branches kind of coming down and straight towards the viewer, and that will allow it to make it look a little bit more natural. So that looks pretty good. And plus we're putting snow on it later too. So know that you've got the ability to have snow as well. So on this side, again, I'm going to give myself some markers, but you don't have to do that. I'm going to maybe have one in through here. I'm going to have another one maybe somewhere here, and a third one here, and then I'm going to have maybe some small ones. Make sure that you kind of close off this edge over here. I like to have my trees kind of different heights, but you could, you know, feel free to make yours whatever heights you would like. Maybe bring this up. So these are very close, so I know that down below they're probably all going to kind of merge together. If you want to see one tree in front of the other in this early stage so you don't get confused, what you can do is just make one of them, like if I'm doing this one all the way to the right, I can make it lighter than the one behind it. So I'm using a lot of green right now on my brush, and you'll see how that this will play out. If I need to be able to see the difference between them right now, if I do that one and then let's say I do this one in through here, I can get them to be, it's pretty light in through there, and then I could do, say, a dark one behind it. And then that's going to give me just an easy way to be able to see the difference between those trees right in this beginning early stage. But sometimes that's not entirely necessary, but if you feel that that would help you to work your way through it, you could certainly do that. I could pick up a little bit more black and maybe just do the tips of whatever ones that I want to be in the back, and then I could do the front ones next. So there's different ways to do it. Whatever way is easiest for you is, you know, the way that you can approach it. But again, we also have a lot of snow and stuff that's going to go on top of this that's going to help to disguise any imperfections in your trees. But if you can get some nice pointy tops on there, that would definitely make them look nice and traditional as far as the evergreen type of trees go. And that's looking pretty good. Just making sure I dot this enough in through here. And then I'm going to allow myself to do, let me just put a little bit more black down at this bottom so we've got some good dimension at the bottom of these trees. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the start of their reflections. So I'm going to do this one first, because I've got this tree. These are pretty much almost the same height, and that's going to help me with my reflections as well. So I've just got the green and the black on my brush right now. I'm going to start right at the bottom of my island and give myself a left to right mark that's about as wide as the base of that tree. This one I'm going to have stopping right before it hits the land in through here. And all I'm going to do is do a left to right kind of wiggle type of a brush stroke. You can, if your brush is overloaded and it's just a solid color, just wipe your brush off on your paper towel and you can pick up clean black if you wanted to, and you'll see the black better, or clean green and you'll see the green better. So again, we're going to put snow and stuff on top of this reflection, so don't worry about it being perfect at this point. Just as long as that base is the right width and you've got a pointy top, you'll be all set. Now when I go over to this side, whatever tree is the same height as this one, which is probably about this one here, that one's got to come down about as low as this one. So I'm going to start with that tree first so I don't get lost in my reflection, and then I can tell which ones need to be longer or short, or longer or shorter from there. And again, just kind of wiggling my brush left to right. And I really only need to concentrate on the tips for this one because it's pretty solid right in through there, so I can just almost bring this all the way across like this. This one over here is going to be the longest, so I know that that's going to go right past my my land, so I can just bring that reflection right into my land. I have no big deal there, and then this middle one is going to go somewhere in between. So just giving myself a little in between kind of tree like that. And this is reflections are fun because you don't have to have a mirror type of an image. All you really need to do is a nice color pattern that is similar to what's above. You want to have, if you've got 6 trees, you got to have 6, tips to your trees down below. So just something that is similar in elements and colors, but it does not have to be a mirror image. Something, again, with those color patterns is close enough and will give the viewer enough information to know that it's a reflection of it. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your base coat for the trees and a base coat for the reflection, you can wash and dry the large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be finishing our reflections, our islands, and our trees. And this will be a reflection of these back trees as well. I'm going to be using my bristle brush, my large bristle brush, but you could certainly use any brush that's comfortable to you, especially when we're doing this back area, because I'm going to be using this in kind of a scrubbing type of a technique. You might find that a smaller brush works better for you, but I like using this so I can kind of maneuver it around in an easy way for me. I'm going to be using black, gray, and white, and if I have to use any other colors, I certainly will, and I'll let you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be starting with a tiny bit of black paint on my brush, and when I say tiny bit, I mean just a itty bitty bit. I don't need much at all. And I'm going to be adding the darkest shadows underneath my land, and that will separate my land from my water, and then I'll be doing some reflections as well. So I have a tiny bit of black paint on my brush. On my islands, I'm going to take this little sliver of gray that I have here, and I'm going to cut it in half. So I've got a tiny bit of black paint on my brush. I'm just going to kind of rub it in like this, and what this automatically does is it puts a shadow underneath my island and gives it its reflection as well. So it's just a really easy way to create that reflection without doing much work. I'm going to do the same thing over here, and I don't have to have a super straight line. I just want something that's going to separate those two, the reflection from the actual land itself. I'm going to use that same thought process up top. I'm actually putting a tiny bit of water on my brush as well because I'm in a little bit smaller of an area up here, and I want to make sure I can control what I'm doing with my paint and where it's going. So I can just kind of push it around a little bit in through here so I can split some of that land with the water if I want to, and if I don't get it split exactly the way that I want to, I can certainly add more into the reflection, but that's looking pretty good to me. And then what I'm going to do while I'm up here is I'm also going to pull down little pops of those trees. So I'm going to just use the corner of my brush and pull down these little like pointy type of marks. You could certainly use a smaller brush if you wanted to. This is just, I might actually, let's see, let me just make sure. I might actually change brushes because I don't want to be out of control here, but yeah, I'm going to change brushes to my medium brush just to get these little trees to come down. I don't want them to be too soft looking, so I'm just changing my brush to my medium brush with a little bit of black and water. There we go. So now I've got more control. I didn't feel like I had enough control with the other brush. And wherever I see a big one, you know, sticking up, that's the one that's I'm gonna pull down a little bit further. This one is so far off in the distance, you really don't have to do a ton to it. But again, just getting a couple of those similar points coming down. Wherever you see one up top, just bring a point coming down into that reflection, and that's what's going to give it its little bit of reflective magic. And then once I've got that on there, I'm just going to pick up a little bit of my gray and white on this brush to give a little bit of additional reflection of the land in that water. So I don't need to do much, just a little bit. Wherever I see these bright white pops, maybe I'll put a little bit of that in the water as well. And if you felt you wanted to or needed to bring that reflection down any farther, you certainly could. Like I feel I want a tiny bit farther, so I just put a little bit of gray with a little bit of water on my brush, just because I want it to feel like I've got, you know, some good substance to that water in through there. Yeah, that looks good. Just a little bit, just to feed my painterly eye. That's all I ever need to do. She's hungry all the time. She wants to get fed. So whatever I need to do, it all works out. There we go. That looks good. Something like that. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead. I'm switching back to my large brush just to finish out these guys. So I've got my separation between my land and my reflection. I'm going to now pick up a tiny bit of white paint on my dirty brush, give myself a little pop of the snow on the land. We're going to put snow on the trees in a minute, but this is just giving me these little pieces of snow in between the branches down on the ground, and then maybe a little bit in that reflection. Again, the reflection doesn't have to be a mirror image, just something, and it can be softer and more, you know, pulled out a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing over on the left side. So white paint with my dirty brush. I'm going to put a little bit extra up on top of here. And of course you could have yours very white or just little subtle pops, whatever is speaking to you is totally fine. And then just whatever you do up top, bring a little bit of it into that reflection. Just a little bit on the edge. That works for me. Now I'm going to put the snow on my trees. So I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm picking up some of that custom gray, and I'm going to be dotting my snow in this stippling type of a technique to give myself the illusion of snow sitting on the tree. I'm not covering up the whole tree. I just want to give myself shadowy pieces of snow. You could use the blue, your custom blue that you used for your sky and for your water, but I'm going to start with my gray, and then I'm going to use a little bit of white. I got to be careful over here so I can make sure I understand which trees are in front of which. So I'm going to just hit these back trees first, putting it a little bit heavier on the top, and then kind of dissipating it as it's falling behind those front trees. This one's going to be kind of sneaking out this left-hand side. That looks pretty good. Again, I just have gray on my brush right now. I'm allowing for some of those evergreen branches to be visible, so that way it looks like the snow has not covered it 100%, but it is definitely giving it a nice coverage in this cool winter scenery. So that looks pretty good. And then in a minute I'll hit it with the with a little bit of extra white on it. So again, I sometimes find myself following a pattern as I put the paint on. So I'm thinking I'm starting on the left-hand side of these trees and then just bringing it over to the right. I'm thinking there's not a real firm light source in this painting. Definitely there's one up above. You'll see it as we paint our angel, but I don't want these other trees to take away from the focal point, so I'm not making them very dramatic. I'm really just keeping things on the subtle side. Now I'm going to put a little bit of white paint on my brush without washing my brush. So I'm going to put a little bit more white towards the top of some of these trees, so that way that'll speak to where that light source is, and it'll give, you know, credibility to where I'm putting the light source on my angel later as well. But I definitely want to make sure that there's a little bit of snow everywhere, but if, you know, it goes too light, you can certainly just bring some of that gray back. And if you can keep it a little bit lighter at the top, awesome. If not, no worries. So I'm picking up more of my white and just kind of tapping it along these tops. I'll put some down in a minute, but just kind of getting a little bit at these tops, so it makes me happy. And of course, putting it along the side, if you want something to stand out in front of another tree, you can put it, you know, if you want those left sides to be a little bit brighter, that'll make them stand out in front of the tree behind it. So those are just little tricks. Even if you don't want to bring it all the way white, just adding to that contrast from one tree to the other along the edge where they're touching each other, that's going to help the viewer to understand which one sits in front of the other one. And then I'm going to just pick up a little bit more gray to get this other side of the tree, or the bottom edges of the tree. There we go, that's looking good. And then I will, I'll let mine dry, and if I feel that there's any additional snow, oh, we need to do the reflection real quick too. The reflection of these trees. I'm thinking that those look pretty good. I'm just going to take whatever's on my brush, a little bit of that gray and white, wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and give myself a little bit of the snow on those trees. I feel like I have too much paint on my brush, so I'm going to wipe it off even more. I don't want this reflection to be overpowered, so I have some gray, I have a little bit of white on my brush, just kind of softening this into the water. And if you felt as you're doing this reflection that you wanted it to blend into the water a little bit more, you could certainly pick up some of that water color, the blue, and get it to blend in a little bit more as well. But I'm thinking that this is going to be pretty okay. I've got my gray in through there. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white to just give myself, again, something that is color patterned to what's happening up above. So if I have a little bit more white on these left-hand sides, I just kind of tap in a little bit more white on those left-hand sides, or up at the tippy top of that tree. And again, that's just going to give the viewer the understanding of what this is that they're looking at. It's a reflection of what's above. And then again, just let it dry. See if there's any additional little tweaking that you want to do. And then we're going to be using our pencil for the next step. So you can put this large brush away, take out your pencil, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our people and the bench. I'm going to be using my pencil. You can certainly use any drawing utensil that you would like throughout this process. I do recommend, again, that your canvas is dry before you start this step, because it's always easier to draw on a dry canvas than it is a wet canvas. So I'm going to have two people sitting on my bench. One of them's an angel, and one of them is, I'm considering it to be a female. I'm going to give her a female type of a shape, but you could certainly have any two people on the bench that you would like. I'm going to have a really long, just flat bench. There's not going to be any backing to it or arms or anything, so it'll just be a platform bench with a couple of legs on it. I'm going to have my angel is going to be almost dead center in my canvas in through here, and she's going to be just about as tall as my water, and then my other person is going to be a little bit shorter than her. So I'm going to be putting my drawing my bench first, and I'm thinking that my pencil is going to be too dark on top of this blue, so I also have a white pencil that I'll be working with. I'm going to guide you through a series of markers, and we're going to connect the markers, and we'll go from there. Hopefully by the time we're done, we'll have something that we can paint in. So I'm going to start with my bench. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have the platform of my bench a little bit above wherever my snow line is. So your snow line might be higher or lower. If your snow line is way up here, and you don't want your angel and your person to be too small, you could certainly put the top of your bench in your snow line, but mine's going to go a little bit above. I'm going to go about an inch above my snow line, and I'm about 4 inches in from the left-hand side of my canvas. This is going to be the left side of my bench top, and then I'm going to go to the right. This is about 9.5 inches wide. You could certainly make yours bigger or smaller based on what your size canvas is and how wide you want your bench to be. And I'm just going to connect the top like this, and then the bottom is going to be connected like this. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to do a lot of painting on top of this. It just helps to start the process. I'm going to put a couple of legs on my bench. I'm going to need my regular pencil so you can see it as it goes into the snow. So I'm going to have just something like this, a little bit wider at the top, a little bit more narrow at the bottom. Same thing over in through here, just a little generic kind of leg for it. I'm going to draw my angel first because her wings are going to be sitting behind my other person. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up from my bench. If this is where my land line is, I'm going to come about 1/3 of the way between here and here, coming down. So this is going to be like the top of her shoulders, somewhere in through here. I'm going to give myself a line that is about 1.5 inches wide. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this down to the bench using kind of an hourglass type of a shape. So I'm going to come to the right like this and just kind of give it a little bit of a curve. Think of this as her shoulder. I'm going to bring it in for her waist and bump it out for her hip. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to bring it out a little bit on the left-hand side for her shoulder or top of her back. Bring it in just a little bit for her waist and out for her hip. I'm going to bring this down into my bench just a tiny bit. You don't need to bring it far. She's just sitting on the edge of the bench like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put her head on. So she's going to have long hair that's going to cover part of her back. So I'm going to just come in just a little bit from these shoulders and just bring a crescent type of or top part of an oval up in through there. And then I'm going to bring some hair down her back. So I'm going to just kind of pull it in just a little bit as if it's coming over her shoulders, and I'm going to bring it down almost to her waist. I'm bringing her hair down pretty darn far, just kind of giving myself a little ripple down at the bottom. You could now, if you wanted to, erase this top line so that way you don't get confused by that guideline, and then you'll have the vision of what her hair looks like. I'm going to put her wings on next. They're going to come out right at this shoulder area. Think of them coming out right from underneath her hair like this, and same thing down at the bottom like this. They're going to come out from underneath her hair. Like, think of where her shoulder blades are. I'm going to have this wing way up. It's going to curve above her head. I'm almost at my land line up and through there. I'm going to bring this down in a real long curved manner, and I'm almost down to the bottom of the foot of my about halfway between the bench and the bottom of the foot. So somewhere in through here is where this line is going to end up. I'm bringing it out in a little bit of a curve like this. I'm crossing over my bench, and I'm going to hit that mark right in through there. On the back side of the wing, I'm going to just give myself some little feathery type of marks, and then I'm just going to kind of bring this down in a pretty carefree kind of way. I don't need to do anything really perfect with the wing right now, just kind of giving myself where I want those feather edges to go. And again, I can erase this shoulder guideline after I get that wing done so I don't get confused, and I can also erase the bench that's inside the wing, because the wing is going to sit on the outside of that of that bench. Let me just put this regular pencil down here so I can see the rest of that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to curve this up. It's going to go up past her head. I'm not more than maybe an inch to the left, maybe an inch, inch and a half to the left of the center of her head. This is just so you don't go too far over to the left. If you come straight down from the corner of the tip of the wing, if this is halfway over the bench, I'm just a little bit to the left of the halfway point of the bench. This way you won't throw your other person too far off the bench. I'm going to bring this wing down to about here is where I'm going to curve this down to. So I'm going to take it from here and bring this curved line in through here, all the way down to my marker down here. Just use a regular pencil so you can see it. My little tip is going to be up there. And again, I'm coming from this marker here, giving myself a little shorter feather area there, and then maybe some little longer ones down in through here. I'm going to erase my guidelines that I don't need, which is this one in through here, and then this one on the bench right in through there. It doesn't need to be erased perfectly, but whatever helps for you. Then I'm going to put the bottom part of her skirt. She's sitting, so we don't need this really long, but I want to be able to see it. This is going to be a fun combination for me with both of these drawing utensils so you guys can see it. So below her hips, just kind of come below her hips, and her skirt, or the bottom part of her dress, is going to come out in this region like this. And then I'm just going to cross it over into my snow. I'm not going to go all the way as far down as the foot of the bench, but somewhere in this vicinity. So that'll be the bottom part of her skirt. So that's her. I'm going to go ahead and put her companion over on the left-hand side. So I'm going to take it from, I want this person to be a little bit shorter than her. So I'm going to take it right from maybe a little bit below her shoulders, maybe where her wing is coming out. This is going to be the top shoulder area, just like I did on the angel. I'm going to do on this neighboring person, but we're only going to see the left side of the body, not the right side. So I'm going to take it from here, and then I'm just going to bring it down in a similar kind of profile that I did with the angel. I'm going to bring this into the bench and then just kind of ripple it, because this is going to be the bottom of her jacket down in through here. She needs an arm that's going to rest on the bench, so I'm going to take it from this shoulder and bring a diagonal line down in through here where I'm just shy of the bench. I'm going to kick it out for a little cuff to her jacket, and then I'm going to bring it back up in a diagonal way to meet there. I'm going to give her a little hand that has a mitten or a glove or something on it, something like this, and I'm bringing it just below the bench line. So I can, again, erase that bench line so it looks like she's sitting on the bench now. She's just a little bit below that. I'm going to put a scarf area up and through here, so whenever I'm outside I wear lots of scarves. So she's going to get one too. That's her scarf. I'm going to put her head in through here, and she's getting a big old hat, because I wear big hats too when I'm outside. So I'm going to get a big hat on right in through there. And then I'm going to put some legs on. She's wearing some pants, so I'm just going to put some casual legs kind of coming down in this direction so I'm a little bit inside of her hip, and then just bringing this down like this. And I'm thinking has some nice warm snow pants on or something, keeping her warm, so just a nice diagonal line like that. And then this one I might give a little bit more movement. Maybe I just kind of bring this at a little bit of a diagonal, like that's her knee, something like that. This side, maybe that's behind the wing, and then just bring this down like this, just so we have a little bit of a posture or a little bit of a different type of a look on it. And this is all going to be snow down here. I'm going to erase this little guideline in through here, and then I think that's all I need to do. We are going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your drawing done, you can certainly make any little modifications that you want. We're going to use our medium brush for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat for our bench and our two people. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, and gray. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing a base coat of black for her pants, her head, her mitten, and then we'll use brown for the coat, hat, hair, and gray for our angel. So I'm going to start with just my black items. So I'm just putting a little bit of black paint on, oh, and we'll do brown for the bench as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a base coat. As I'm doing these base coats, what I'm going to be concentrating on is getting rid of my my drawing utensil, whatever I used. So I used chalk or white pencil and regular pencil. So I'm concentrating on just making sure I can hide those wherever possible. And when I'm doing clothing, well, as I'm doing in this area in through here, I do like to give a little bit of movement to my clothing, so I will buckle out or bump out a couple of edges. I like it to look nice and natural, especially when somebody's wearing winter clothing. To me, you'd have like lumps and bumps and stuff in your clothing. So I like to make it look that way. So as I'm going down these lines, if I want it to look like it's a little bit fuller, or there's a, a cuff of sorts or a bigger boot or anything along that line, I just bump those out a little bit. I'm going to have her mitten is going to be with black, and of course I'm bringing this a little bit into my into the bench a little bit. And you're also, if there's areas that you feel you want to, make bigger or smaller, this is the time to do it. So you can leave any of your drawing utensils. So if I wanted this head to be more narrow, I could leave some of my outline and just erase it after I was all done. Or vice versa, if I wanted to make it bigger, I could certainly do that. I think those are all my black areas I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna wash and dry my brush, and I'm gonna load it with brown paint. So I'm gonna do my bench is gonna be with brown, and I know my brown is gonna be transparent. So as I go over areas that have a lighter versus a darker background, such as right here, I will see the evidence of that, the paint underneath, which at this stage of the game I'm okay with, because I will take care of that on the next step. This is really, again, just to provide me with a nice base coat that I can work off of for adding all of my highlights and shadows and details and all that good stuff. And for me, because I used a white pencil, I will also be able to most likely see that white pencil underneath this particular color and maybe some of my other colors as well. And again, I'm okay with that because I know I've got lots of details to go. So it is not a problem for me as I'm going through this painting process. I'm also going to be using brown as a base coat for the hair on my angel. So I'm just going to take and color in this entire area like this. And when I get to the bottom of her hair where it is meeting her, I was a little outside my lines there, as it's meeting her back in through here, I'm just going to give it a kind of a nice soft edge to it where some of the pieces are a little bit longer than others. You don't have to do that. Yours can be nice and clean across if you want to look like she's got a nice trimmed hairline. I'm going to do the same color base for my clothing. I'm going to paint right over this kind of midline into here. I suppose you could have left that there, but I will be able to create that detail with the next step without a problem. Or you can just kind of do something like that where you can still see the evidence of that line. I'm going to put it right on her scarf in through here. So if you want to or feel that it's necessary to leave some of your guidelines, for instance, the scarf to the jacket, you could certainly just leave a tiny little space in between those sections, or just leave your little evidence of your guideline to help you through the next step. Most of these will be very simple to separate when we go to put the details on, but if you feel that it would help you through your process, you can certainly leave those lines there. And just bringing this all the way down to her cuff area. And again, if you still see your marks underneath right now, that's all right. As I come down to where her jacket is going to meet the bench, again, you can just leave a little bit of the evidence of that line there, your guideline, to help you through the future process. Now I'm going to be washing and drying my brush, and I'm going to be, oh, actually, I have a little spot of my bench I missed right underneath my angel. She needs to be sitting on the bench too. So we got to put a little piece of bench in through here. So this is just still the brown on my brush, bringing this right across like this, and I'm pulling it up in between what are going to be the wings as well, just so I have nice coverage behind there. Glad I remember, or I noticed that. Just making sure it's as high as I want, right by her rear end here. Okay, now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put that gray that we used for the base coat of the snow. I'm going to use that as the base coat for her dress and her wings. So again, as I'm doing this, if I want or need the evidence of where the wings meet the back, just leave a little line or a little piece of your guideline visible. Where it meets her hair, you can just bump right into the edge of her hair, and we're going to be putting a shadow on later, so you'll be able to see the evidence of where her hair meets her back. And then I'm just bringing this all the way down. I'm going to bring it down onto the bench like that. And again, I'm doing a pretty clean edges when it's on the side of the body, but when I go to do the wings themselves, I might have a little bit of messiness to it. She's got for me a little edge of her shoulder showing in through here. You might not have that visible on yours, but if you do, you can capitalize on it and get it to be evident. And then I'm just going to bring this wing right underneath her hair. And again, I'm leaving, especially on this area, I'm even leaving a little bit of my outline so I don't get lost amongst between the wings and her back. So this will just give me help along the way as I go to do my details, leaving those little bits, because these are the same colors, where I'm using the same color for my wing base as my dress base. As I come down to the edges of the feathers on her wings, I'm going to use a little bit more of a pointy type of brush stroke to the edge of them. So I'm just kind of pushing my brush to create these little feathery corners of sorts at the edges of the wings, but the rest of the wing at this point, I don't need to do any detail to it, so I'm just going to color it with a solid color. When I go to add the details of the feathers on the wings later, that's when I'll be able to make more defined marks and make it look like it's got dimension and everything. But again, this is just that base coat that will help us get dimension, because I'm using a nice dark base on here. So we'll build it to the light, which will give it some great dimension, and we'll have lots of textural elements to her beautiful feathery wings. Just bringing this right in through here. And then I'm going to do the same application down at the bottom of this wing, where the feathers create that bottom edge to it. And when I go to do the details, I'll make these edges a little bit messier too. Again, right now, this is just the base coat to get us started. Here's where I'm going to slow down a little bit and give myself these little pointy type of almost little curved edges. Not necessarily curved, well, I guess they have a little bit of a curve to them. Just something that's going to be a little bit more representational of the tips of a feather, as opposed to just a straight line or something. We're doing something with movement. And then I'm going to put the bottom of her dress on in through here. So again, just kind of going right in my my guideline marks that I had made, and if you go outside your guidelines, that's okay. We'll fix it the next step. And then I'm just going to bring this all the way down to the bottom, and then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this medium brush. I'll just get this little tip over here and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the ground. I'm going to use my medium brush. I'm going to be using black, gray, white, and probably some of my custom blue as well. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating a shadow underneath my bench, which will be the shadow of the bench and my people. I also want to make some footsteps coming from my person, or yeah, made by my person. So some footsteps in through here, and we're going to be creating a nice shadow on the snow and just making sure everything kind of connects together. So I'm going to start with my darkest areas, which will be the inside of my footsteps and then right directly underneath my bench. Again, I'm having my light source just up high in the sky, so I've got my highlight on the top of my people. It might be a little bit in front of them because I want to pull my shadow a little bit behind them as well. So I'm going to start with a tiny bit of black paint on my brush, and I'm going to be making my shadow really dark underneath the bench, right underneath the dress in through here. I'm just kind of wiggling my brush back and forth, left to right now. I know my bench is got to be right between these legs of it, so I can assertively just kind of bring a nice dark shadow right underneath that. And then once I've got that, and again, I'm just kind of maneuvering my brush left to right. I'm going to let myself just kind of run out of paint in a second here, but I want to get some little footsteps too. So I'm going to have them a big one. I want it bigger over here and smaller as it goes towards the person. So I'm going to create a pretty big one over here with this dark black that's on my brush. And to me, if my light source is up and over forward a little bit, I'm going to have this shadow kind of on the back side of the snow. She would have pushed the snow as she was walking. So this is I'm going to put a little bit of water on my brush too, so I can spread this out a little bit more in the way I want. There we go. So think of this almost kind of like a horseshoe type of a shape, and I'm making it kind of bigger towards this left hand side like that, and then maybe I've got the evidence of one in through here. So again, this is just a little bit of black on my brush to start those footsteps. Now with the remnants of the black on my brush, I'm going to start pulling out a kind of almost a lighter version of the shadow, because I'm running out of paint and I have a little bit of water on my brush. I've got the leg of the bench, I've got the leg of my person, I've got the other leg of my person, and if my light source I'm thinking is kind of in front of them a little bit in the sky, so this would just be kind of back and it would splay out a little bit from left to right. So I'm just going to take this and bring it out towards the right on this side. So that's working out pretty well. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to pick up a touch of my sky blue, or that custom blue that we had created to get this shadow to blend in with my snow a bit more. So just a itty bitty bit on my dirty brush is going to give me this cool tone to the snow back in through here. So this is just a little trick to get these colors to really just look wintry and have them blending in with the whole surroundings and making it look all nice and harmonious throughout the painting. So that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of my gray and just make sure that this kind of blends in as much as I want to before I start picking up white. White's going to be my final color. So this is just a little bit of gray. I don't even know if I said I was going to use gray, but I am using it a little bit just to get it to blend in. Now I'm going to pick up white on my dirty brush. So this is going to be my lightest of my light highlights, and this is going to go on kind of the top left side of my footprints, and I just blend it out. So I got it right in through here. And again, think of this like as she's walking, she kind of pushes the snow, and then the highlight is going to be on the side where the sun is. And so again, I've got my sun up and kind of forward a little bit. Even though you can't see it, I'm implying to the viewer where it is by these little piles of snow that I'm putting strategically along the painting or around the painting, or where I'm putting the highlights in the painting. So I'm thinking those footsteps look pretty good. Just make sure you got a little bit extra in through here. Make sure that looks nice. And if you had other areas that you wanted to finish, or if you needed any more additional white or snow anywhere else, feel free to do that. Like I feel like I want a little bit more over in through here, right around her dress a bit. And then I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to let mine dry. And if there's any additional places where I feel that I could amp up the snow any, I certainly would. But I'm thinking I've got some good footsteps. I've got maybe just a little extra lightness on the other side of these footsteps just to give it a little bit more fluffy snow feel to it. Yeah, there we go. That works. And if you made your insides too dark, just pull a little bit of softness from the gray or something inside. Yeah, that looks good. So we are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your shadows and your snow complete, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the bench. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors I'm going to use are black, brown, and white. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adding shadows underneath the bench onto the legs. I'm going to be making sure that I have a nice coat of paint on the legs so they look finished. And then on the seat part, I'm going to be adding a real bright highlight on the top side of it, and then just making sure this back side is nice and finished. So I'm going to add my shadows first. I'm going to start with a little bit of black paint on my brush. I'm going to do my legs first. I have shadow underneath this leg in through here, and what I'm doing is I'm just underlining the top where the seat part is, and then I can just kind of pull this down. So it's just going to make it look like it's casting a shadow right on the side of that bench. Then I can pick up some brown on my dirty brush, give myself a second coat on this leg of the bench. I will add a highlight in a minute, but this is just gonna give me my shadow with the black, which I'm picking up again. It'll give me my shadow, and you can make it pretty dark going down that inside of it. I'm going to go to the other leg, going to do the same thing. So I'm doing my shadow, and then I'll add my highlight. So this just gives me a nice process that is pretty simple for me to follow along with. I'm putting that shadow on that inside. I just picked up brown on my dirty brush to give myself another second coat on that leg. So something like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the seat part. So I need a shadow underneath both rear ends. So I just picked up a tiny bit of black, and I'm going to give little shadow underneath here, back to the back side of the bench, right in through here. And then same thing on this one right here. So I just have black on my brush, just kind of underlining whatever garment they are wearing, or whatever piece of the body it is, so something like that, and then bringing the shadow back to where I feel the edge of the bench would be. So somewhere in that region works out for me. For her, maybe this one I can bring it out like this. Yeah, that looks a little bit more realistic to me. And then the wings are just covering up the back side of it. I'm going to wash and dry my brush now. And I'm going to put brown with a touch of white on my brush. So brown with a touch of white. So I can get just a little highlight over, not so much so that it screams highlight, but so we see that this is a wood object. So I don't want it to look like there's a bright highlight on it, but I want it to look like a wood object. So that's why I'm putting brown and white, almost so I can have this little streakiness going down it, so it has a little bit of texture to it. And I'm going to do the same thing on the, and I think if you wanted to, if you needed to put like little snow around the edges of that, that would work too. Brown and white is going back on my brush. I'm going to do the back edge of my bench. So this is just brown and white, creating a back edge to the bench. Brown and white, just keep going back and forth on my brush. Sometimes it's going to be lighter, sometimes it's going to be darker. That's the beauty of having two colors on your brush. You get a two-tone value without and details without doing too much work, which is awesome. So again, just brown with a little bit of white is on my brush, giving me this edge, this back edge to the bench. Now what I'm going to do, I want that top side of the bench to look really bright, but I did notice I've got my mitten right in through here. I don't necessarily want a black shadow behind it, but I think I gotta go for it. So I just put black paint on my brush so I can get a little shadow behind this mitten, because I did it for the body, so I've got to do it for this mitten as well. Just bringing it right to the edge of the bench. Washing and drying my brush, I'm going to put white paint on my brush. I'm making the top of this bench super bright, so it looks like there's a lot of light being beamed onto these two people or in the atmosphere, so I wanted it just really nice and white. So just bright white on top there, and then wherever you have little spots, I got a little spot in through here that needs to get some. So I'm going to put it right there and just bring it back into this little, and if you don't want to do bright white, you can always do white. I just picked up a little bit of brown as it's going towards the back side of the bench. That'll be up to you, but I think that white, I like the white better. I'm just going white. I'm going in, I'm doing it with white. That's where my eye is happy with it. I'm going to put a little bit of white. I got a little tiny spot in through here. I think I need a little bit right in through here. And when we put the wing detail on too, this is just one of those little details that, you know, you don't really, it doesn't really catch the eye too much as being a huge aspect of the painting, but it makes a difference as far as telling the story of how bright it is outside and, you know, what kind of bench they're sitting on. And, you know, it just adding these little tiny details, even though it's not a difficult step, but it adds a lot to the image. It shows how wide that bench is. Of course, this right side looks a little wider than the left side, but that's all right. We can pull this out a little bit too. Maybe make this back of it look a little bit wider. I just do the same thing over here so I can reshape my bench if I want to. There we go. That looks pretty good. So I think that's all I'm going to do for my bench. I'm going to probably let it dry, step back from it for a minute, see if I feel that there's any little adjustments I need to do. Maybe I need to bring this up a little bit higher here. Just make sure it travels across in the same way from one side to the other. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you get this done, you can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our person on the left. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, white, red, and yellow. And if I use any other colors, I'll let you know. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be creating a maroon type of jacket, scarf, and hat She's going to maintain her black hair. I'm going to have some shadows underneath my scarf, and I'll be creating highlights and shadows on her jacket, her mitten, and her pants in order to give a little bit of form to her body. I'm going to start with her mitten and her pants because those are going to be a little bit easier. I might actually use a little bit of brown too for my highlights on my mitten. But what I'm going to do, all I'm going to do for my pants and my mitten is add a little bit of black and white on my brush at the same time. You could certainly use your pre-mixed gray if you want to, but all I really need to do is give a little bit of wrinkles or highlights in the pants, maybe a little bit more towards that left-hand side in order to just maybe show the cuff or the heel of the shoe or the pull of the pants as it's, you know, coming down underneath her leg. I put the highlight on there, and then I just picked up a little bit of black paint in order to make sure that I've got it blended the way that I want. Again, I'm hardly doing anything. I just want there to be something that gives a little bit of shape to her body. So it's not just a black stick, you know, underneath the bench. Again, black and white are on my brush right now. Maybe just pull a little bit of the ripples in the pants as it's coming down here. Maybe a little ripple down at the bottom, picking up a little bit of black, a little bit more black on my brush. And again, I'm not doing anything to change the color of the pants. I really am just looking to give something, some kind of movement to them so they're not just flat black. Again, you could certainly have yours flat black if you wanted to. I'm thinking that's looking all right to me. I'm going to do a similar activity on her glove or mitten, but I think I'm going to actually use a little bit of brown and white. So this looks like it's more, has a little bit more sunshine on it. So brown and white give me maybe a little fluffiness to the top of her mitten. And of course, you could certainly make it any color you want. She could be wearing purple mittens or green mittens, whatever you'd like. And I just picked up a little bit more black in order to just get this to go. Again, I don't need to do much. I'm just giving her a little highlight on her mitten. That's all I'm doing. You could have her look like she's wearing gloves, but I'm just going for a little mitten. So that's all she's getting. Next, I'm gonna, I don't need to do anything to her hair other than I just put black on my brush to make sure that it's fully colored in. So if you have any spots that are not finished, just hit a second coat. I still have the black on my brush. I'm gonna do a shadow underneath her scarf. So I'm pulling black and then I just kind of rub it in with my finger. Didn't really need to rub it in with my finger, but I'm bringing a little bit more black under kind of underneath her arm, but in her waist a little bit too. So this is going to separate her arm from her back, and it's also going to give a little bit of shape to her body. So this is just a little bit on this back side in through here. I'm also going to put a little bit of this over on this right hand side to do a similar or tell a similar story as I have on this left-hand side. This will make a little bit more sense when I start adding the color too. I'm going to put a tiny bit of this shadow up on her hat as well. So where the rim part meets the tippy top part, I'm just going to kind of dot in a little bit of a shadow in through here. So now that I've got my shadowy areas, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to add some color to this. So what I'm going to do for my color is I'm going to be using, I'm washing and drying my brush. I'm going to use a custom kind of maroony color. So this is where I'm headed here. How I got to that was red, a little bit of black. The black can the black can easily take over, so I need more red to counteract that. And I'm going to add a little bit of yellow into it as well. This is just a custom color that I thought would be pretty. You don't have to do the same color as I'm doing. It's going to be on top of brown, so it will look different as I go to paint it, but I just thought it was a nice warm wintry color to use. So I've got that color in through there. I'm going to be giving her some texture on her hat. So all I'm going to be doing is kind of polka dotting this up in through here. You could, of course, use it with another color if you wanted to, but this is just going to give me my texture. I'm going to add a little bit of a highlight in a minute, but this is, I'm polka dotting it so it takes on various, that was way too far into her scarf. So it takes on various tones with that brown underneath. But again, you could, you know, have fun with making it light or dark. That was polka dotting on the scarf, or on the hat. On the scarf, I'm going to be going in a long brush stroke, left to right, curving it around that neck, even in that front part. If I felt that I need to pull it down any farther, you can extend it as much as you want. And then on the jacket part, I'm going to be using it more of just a solid type of a color initially. So just kind of rubbing it on here. It's going to be transparent, so you're going to see those shadows underneath that I've already created, and that's going to provide me with my my form on her body. So just bringing this all the way down to the jacket at the bottom, in through here. I'm going to bring it all the way up to her shoulders, and through here, bringing it right to my angel wing. And you can even overlap that shadow underneath the scarf a little bit. Going to bring it all the way down this left arm in through here. And again, this is a transparent type of a color, which means you're going to be able to see it's taking on the color that's underneath it. So it's providing it with an even kind of warmer type of a tone because it's laying right on top of brown. And I love to layer my colors like this because it provides me with unique color choices and colors that you're not going to get out of a bottle. So these are ways to add dimension and depth to the painting by layering on different colors on top of each other and letting them create their own unique color right on the canvas. So once I've got that done, I'm going to add some little highlights. I'm going to put some highlight on her hat. So I'm going to pick up my custom maroon color plus white on my brush at the same time. I'm going to polka dot the top area of this hat as if this is the tippy top of her hat that's got like almost like a flat spot on it. Then I'm going to do the top of this rim area. And of course you can make it as light as you want. I just picked up a little bit more white just to amp up the tippy top of the hat so it makes it understand that we've got a lot of light up top. I'm going to do a little bit on her scarf, but I'm not going to make it as bright as her hat because I feel that the scarf is underneath the hat. So I feel it would get a little bit of a highlight, maybe even, you know, more over here kind of on the left-hand side, but not necessarily as bright as the hat itself. So that's just playing with, you know, where the highlight is. Is it closer to the light source? Is it far away? You make that determination. I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight kind of on her rear end area to make it look like her rear end pops out a little bit. So this is my custom color plus a tiny bit of white. I don't have a lot of white on my brush right now, and just giving myself this little bit of an area that kind of pops out a little bit more, so it gives the illusion that she has form and she's not just flat, so to speak. And I'm going to put maybe a little ripple in her jacket. If you want little ripples in her jacket, you can just lighten it up a little bit wherever you want that ripple to appear. Maybe a little bit lighter than that. maybe just a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to put a highlight on her sleeve as well. So once I've got her backside here as bright as I want, I'm going to put one right especially on her shoulder. So I've got quite a bit of white on my brush right now with my custom color, my custom maroon type of a color. I'm going to put a lot on this shoulder in through here and then bring it down this side of the arm, giving myself a good highlight over here, and then this again not only tells where the light source is, but it's also going to provide the viewer with the information of her form. So that's the key here. You want to tell the viewer where the light source is and tell the viewer what shape and form that object has. So when you're lightening an area, it's going to make that area look fuller and pop out more to the viewer. So this is working out pretty well. I just went to go wipe my brush and I was using my hand as my paper towel. That tells you I'm into my painting right now. And then once I've got this, what I'll do is I will definitely let it dry, step back from it, see if there's anything more I want to do. Like I feel like I want a little more shadow. I picked up black, a little more shadow underneath there, maybe a little bit more on this sleeve. And then once I've got this done, I'm going to be using this same brush for the next step. So I just picked up my custom red, get this on here, this little highlight here. There we go. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the angel dress and her hair. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, white, yellow, and red. If I use any other colors, I'll let you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting a shadow underneath her hairline or her hair. So the shadow is going to be cast on her wings and on her back from her hair. So we'll put a shadow underneath there. We're going to put a shadow underneath the bench, which will hit her dress. And then we're going to finish her dress underneath with just some long flowy brush strokes to create a fabric appearance. And we'll finish her body with a little bit of highlight and shadow to create form. And then we're going to create some texture in her hair with a couple of different tones and brush strokes. So I'm going to start with her shadowy area. I'm going to put black paint on my brush. I'm going to have a nice firm shadow underneath her hair, right on top of that wing, so you can really kind of be bold with the darkness of it. You can even bring a couple little pieces up in between those feathers right in through there. I'm going to color this whole section over in through here with my nice dark black color, and then I'm going to bring this even farther down, farther than her hairline. So that way it appears as if maybe the wings are casting a shadow on her body as well. So bringing this down here, I'm going to bring it down her back. So her hairline is right here. I'm bringing this shadow down even farther. So maybe about a half of an inch to half of an inch, somewhere in through there works for me. I'm going to come to the left side now, going to put a nice shadow underneath her hair coming over her shoulder, and then of course over the wing itself, and then underneath that wing onto her back area in through here. And then I'm going to just bring this down just a little bit down this left-hand side of her hair as well. So you could, I guess this could be down further too, something like that works out for me. Then I think that's about all I'm going to do in there. Maybe a little bit on her body here, just make sure I've got that fully covered there. So I'm going to, I've got black on my brush. I don't necessarily need this dark shadow underneath her skirt to go too far. So I'm going to put a little bit of black right where it meets the bench, right in through there. I'm going to wipe my brush off of my paper towel now and pick up some of that gray. I don't know if I said I was going to use gray, but I am using gray. And I'm going to just make sure this underneath area has a kind of blends in with that black shadow that I just made. And I'm going to just pull this down in what would be to me like the direction of the draping of her dress. So I'm just kind of pulling it down like this, crossing it into kind of almost the bottom part of it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up, without washing my brush, I'm picking up brown with a little tiny bit of white paint on my brush. So what I'm going to do now is with this color, this brown and a little bit of white, I'm going to finesse the edges of my dress down at the bottom where it's just meeting the ground. I don't need to do much. I'm just doing this in order to make sure that I have a second coat on the dress down in through here, and that it looks kind of like it's in the shadow, because I know that I'm going to want to put the brightest white stuff is going to happen on my wings. This area underneath here is just in the shadows underneath the bench. So I don't need to bring too much detail into it, but I do definitely want it to look like it's finished. So I'm going to back up a little bit more of that brown and white, get this left-hand side to maybe this has a little bit more highlight on it because maybe it's, you know, out a little bit further. That can be your judgment call, picking up a little bit more gray just to get it to blend into the stuff underneath. So that's looking pretty good to me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to her body. So I'm going to do a similar thought process where I'm going to have it kind of darker down in through here. I want it lighter where I want her rear end to kind of pop out even more. And then I'm going to put a pretty good highlight on this left-hand side to indicate the light source is hitting, and then a little highlight on the right-hand side. So I'm going to start with a tiny bit of black and water on my brush. So I have black and water on my brush. I just want to make sure that I have this whole bottom area of her bottom nice and fully rendered with kind of a shadow on it, but I don't want it to blend into the shadow that's on the bench. So that's where the water is coming into play on my brush, so I can really spread it out and then just get it to blend in. That's good. Now I'm going to pick up my gray plus a little bit of white. So I have gray plus a little bit of white on my brush, and this is going to give me my area on her rear end that just pops out a little bit more. I'm going to get this left-hand side a little bit lighter. So if I have a light color on my brush, which I just did, I can put it on that left-hand side. Again, gray plus a little bit of white is on my brush right now. Just start over here on the left-hand side and then just blend it into her rear end where I want it to pop out a little bit more. And again, use water or liquid medium in order to get it to stay open longer or wet longer. I like to blend kind of using a rubbing type of a technique. You might find that you want to use more of a smoother type of technique, which might need you to have your paint a little bit more fluid than I have mine. That's going to be wherever your comfort zone is. I'm picking up just white right now to get this left-hand side really bright white, similarly to how we did the edge of the bench. And this is going to, again, speak to the light source. I'm really making it nice and bright over here on this left-hand side. And then I'll get it to blend out into the back side of her. I'm going to put a tiny bit over here. Make sure that is as bright as I want it. Get it to blend in with a little, I'm picking up some of that gray. And then I'm going to do her hair. I'm thinking this is looking pretty good. Let me just make sure that I got this blended up into here. And I'm going to put a little bit more highlight on her rear end. In through, I just picked up more white. I just want to make sure that I have enough volume. So again, so it doesn't look flat. So that looks way better to me. Excellent. So now I'm going to go ahead and move on to her head. So I want to have her looking like she's got kind of dark hair or brown hair, not necessarily black. So I'm going to just start by picking up a little bit of brown paint, making sure that I have a good coverage in the areas that I know it's going to be necessary to have a good coverage. So that's going to be down this back side where it's going to meet the that shadowy area. So I'm even pulling maybe a little bit of this out in through here and overlapping it a little bit into that shadow area. I definitely need some darker tone right in through here. I'm going to have it light at the top and light as it's kind of coming cascading over those shoulders. So I'm concentrating my burnt umber right now on this back side and right in through here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a custom highlight color. So I've got brown burnt umber on my brush. This is my custom highlight color. How I got to this was I used a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow, and a touch of white. And this is going to give me kind of like almost a blonde type of a color, but maybe like a dark blonde type of a color, which it will work great as a highlight to my brown hair. So this is where I'm headed with this. And then I will use this plus my burnt umber to give myself some highlights. But right now I just have that custom color on my brush, so I'm just bringing it in, getting it to blend in with the burnt umber that I had just laid down. And I'm not over painting, just bringing some nice strategic streaks down into that. I'm going to put some up at the top of her head as well. And just whenever I'm painting hair, I'm thinking my brush is going around the head, around how would that hair lay on that head. So she's just got, you know, her hair's pretty straight, so we're just going to get it to lay like that. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown plus a touch of, I think I'm doing a touch of black on my brush too, just to get a tiny bit more shadow right in this area right in here, so we can make sure that that's got some good dimension. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to pick up my highlight color plus white. So that light blonde color or medium blonde color plus white, and I'm going to give myself some nice bright highlight on the top of the head, pulling this down and maybe pulling a couple of these pieces of hair back over her shoulder like this. And when I'm doing hair, I'm trying not to overdo it. Just little streaks of hair is all you need. You don't need to put a really heavy amount of paint on your brush. Just one strand at a time usually does the trick. A little detail brush pulling those pieces for you will give you some great detail and dimension on it, and it'll look really nice and natural. I'm picking up more white right now in order to get the top of her head to be nice and bright white. And then once you've got this done, I'm going to probably fiddle with it a couple more minutes just to get this brightness at the top. But once you've got this done, we are going to use our medium brush for the next step. So you can put this small brush away. Just get a little more white at the tippy top here. You can put the small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our wings. I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, gray, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to progressively get my feathers to go lighter and lighter as they're going towards the top and towards the edge of my wings. I want them to look nice, long, flowy, but I want them to have a nice dimensional element. So I'm going to start from the dark and work my way to the light. I'm going to start with a tiny bit of black paint and water on my brush. This is going to help to just give me my footprint as to where I want my feathers to go. So a lot of times when I'm looking at angel wings, what I'm finding is they have shorter feathers at the top and then these long feathers down at the bottom. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a little tiny bit of black paint and just give myself almost like the essence of the edges of some feathers. I'm going to have some kind of short ones over right about in through here. I'm going to do maybe a couple of intermediate kind of longer ones in through here. So just giving myself this quick, almost like little footprint of where I want the length of them to be. I'm going to take this maybe about halfway up this, or where it comes out of the shoulder blade area. Give myself just these little curved lines kind of coming up in through there. And again, this is just as you're painting the feathers, it's going to help you to stay consistent and in control with where you want them to go, and it will provide you with a much easier process as you're putting the colors and stuff on there, and maybe even have a couple up at the top in through here. So that's going to be just my footprint. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to create a tan color with brown and white. So brown and white is going to give me my dominant color for my feathers, and I want it to be, instead of gray, I want it to have a little bit more luminescent value to it, so the brown helps me to accomplish that. So this is about where I'm headed for my base coat for my feathers, and I don't need to wash or dry my brush at this point, just kind of taking it like that. And I'm going to start down at the bottom, and as I'm doing this, I'm going to just be using a real kind of loose type of brush stroke, pulling them down into those little points that I had. I see I have some of my white pencil still showing. I will get rid of that in a little bit. But I wanted this to look nice and natural, so I'm going to be using this really loose brush stroke in order to accomplish this. If you're feeling that the tan is not blending well with your gray, this is the time where you can pick up some of your gray. I just picked up some of my gray, and you can, without washing my brush, and just kind of intermingle it in between those tan areas. So that's going to make it look very natural. I'm going to pick up more of my tan, and I'm just going to kind of work my way up these feathers in through here like this. And the one thing that for me, when I'm doing something like a feathery type of composition, I know that I want stuff to overlap each other. I know that I want it to look nice and natural. I'm just using my tan right now. I'm going to bring in the gray in a second. I know that I want it to look nice and natural, so I go fast, and because but fast with a plan. So I have my plan in place. I've already kind of outlined my plan, and as I'm executing, I can go a little bit faster, which will allow me to make it look more natural. So I just picked up my tan plus a little bit of gray to get maybe a couple of these to pop out on the sides, and maybe just get that gray to intermingle a little bit. But again, I'm not concerned about staying within every single one of those original marks that I made. I just want it to look natural. So in order for me to make, in my head, to make them look natural, sometimes for me going faster and just kind of swiping on a mark makes it look more natural to me. So you find your groove. Ooh, I missed her little shoulder in through here. Let's hide that with the wing. I'm going to put a little bit of gray on my brush right now. There we go. We'll just get that to meld right in. Picking up a little bit more of my tan right now. So right now I'm flipping back and forth between my tan and my gray in order to get this base coat on here of the feathers. So that's looking pretty good to me. I'm feeling like I've got a nice softness to it already without doing too much. And I've got making sure that it covers over this left-hand side where the transition is between the wing and the neighbor. And then once I've got that, now I just keep building my way to the light. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be picking up tan plus white. And I don't necessarily want these interior wings to be, or feathers to be very bright. So I'm working my way towards the outside. So I have tan plus white on my brush. And I'm going to start over here on the exterior part of these bottom wings, and then just kind of working my way up in this direction. And again, you might find that a different process works more conducively to the way that you paint, and if that's the case, roll with it. You don't have to go with my way of doing things. This is just kind of a suggestion, not a suggestion, but a demonstration on how I do it. And, it may speak to To your painterly style, it may not, but it can give you ideas. It can give you inspiration on how to create something of this nature all on your own, but perhaps with more towards your style of painting or more towards your, way of making brush marks and things of that nature. So again, I'm going tan plus white in order to get some of these on back in through here. And you can see at every layer I do, I'm kind of taking up a little bit less of a space on the wings, so that way, and I'm more towards the outside, so it's getting it to go lighter and lighter and giving it more dimension as I go through this process. And I'm just going up towards this top. I'm going to put some nice lightness right on this inside edge, just like I did on the other side. So whatever you do on one side, you want to kind of emulate that on the other side, especially since my light source I have so generically placed up in the sky a little forward. So I don't need to make it very different from one side to the other. Now I'm just picking up white to get my final brightness on the wings. So I'm just going really bright up at the top, kind of trying to keep some separation, maybe a little bit extra bright over on these edges, but I want to keep that white angelic feel. And in order for the white to pop really well, you've got to have some contrasting color near it. So that's why I progressively went from the dark to the light, and I'm really making this white at the top nice and bright and powerful, so it's going to stand out from the rest of the wings, and you're going to be able to see that angelic kind of appearance, and the white is going to have a lot of say in the composition. And I'm thinking that that's actually pretty good. I might pull a little bit more of the tan back into some of these. I just picked up the tan again just to put just a little bit more so it transitions a little bit more gently into that center area. And then again, I would let it dry. I'm going to take care of any of my pencil marks that are visible that I don't want to be visible, and then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your wings done, you can put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going bottom right on this one. I'm using my small brush and white paint. I'm signing mine with my initials, which is what I typically sign mine with. You could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you want for your identifying mark to be is up to you, because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you would like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very pretty, inspiring, wintry landscape, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.